Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We have another amazing guest for you today, Dan from Talently, actually the founder of Talently. So they started their career as an entry-level sales rep and rose to executive positions at leading SaaS companies in North America. Now, as the founder of Talently, they've built a company from 0 to 1 million in revenue, and they like to share their journey, challenges, and lessons on LinkedIn while connecting with like-minded business professionals. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the warm introduction and thanks for having me on, Chris. You know, it's always good to connect with other business-minded people, especially a fellow Canadian. So I appreciate you having me on.
It's no trouble at all, Dan. And just a note out to all our listeners, yep, we we are based in Canada, so, but business right now is borderless, so don't let that deter you. Now, before we actually dig into it, we do have an icebreaker we like to do on the show. And your question today, Dan, is which cartoon character do you resonate with the most and why?
Yeah, it's a funny icebreaker and business question to start off with. Not something that crosses my mind frequently, but hopefully we'll dive a little bit into this throughout the episode. But I think one person that comes to mind off the top of my head has some nostalgia to me as a child growing up, but also replicates my sort of personality in life and in business. The first person that came to mind is Bart Simpson. Huge Simpson fan growing up. But the reason I say Bart is he's a little bit wild, right? He's got a lot of energy. He gets into trouble. He sort of acts first and then figures things out as he goes. And I think something that I've always taken to business is very high energy. First of all, my background's been in sales my entire life. You have to be high energy and to be successful in sales. But the other side of it is in my entrepreneurial journey, I always have a bias to action. And I always try to act first and do something first. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, then I'll clean up the mess and figure it out after. And I think Bart Simpson sort of has that same approach in his life and creating chaos in Springfield. Is he's always getting into trouble skateboarding or whatever he's doing. And he sometimes ends up in trouble and sometimes he ends up doing pretty cool things. But I think having that energy in business and that sort of curiosity to try new things is something that served me really well. I guess I could see myself as I'm not a great skateboarder, but in his personality, I could see myself in Bart directly.
I like that one. I've been asking that question quite a bit sometimes, and I think it's the first one someone's actually referenced The Simpsons. So that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, you're right. When you're talking about business or you're going into and you want to do something, a lot of us are stopped by that sort of perfectionist role, right? And Bart's more of a, oh, we'll throw a cherry bomb at it and see what happens. So, that kind of energy, you're right, is great. Um, just sliding into that theme, then, how would you define procrastination, and what has it meant for you personally?
Yeah, and I think procrastination is different for everyone and happens in different situations and for different reasons. You mentioned something about perfectionism and making sure things are perfect. That isn't how I sort of see procrastination or how I've dealt with procrastination in the past. Really, my procrastination historically has been about failure. Is I procrastinate on doing something or trying something because truthfully, I'm scared of failing. In school, I wasn't a great student. I procrastinated studying because I knew I wasn't going to do well on the exam, or I wanted to start my business for over a decade of my career, but I never started my own business because I didn't know how it was going to be perceived by others or if the business is going to be successful. And I've always faced those issues when it comes to procrastination of like, it's not about the fear of doing. I think it's the fear of failing is something that's made me procrastinate more than probably should have had. And I think over time, as you push through that barrier, you try new things and you push yourself out of your comfort zone, you hopefully can train your body to hide from that procrastination or push past that procrastination mechanism and act more consistently, knowing that failure isn't that scary and failure can actually be a benefit. If you fail, you can learn. If you learn, you can get better and then you can try again and hopefully you'll fail less moving forward. And the less and less you fail in life and in business, the better you're going to get.
No, I like that, and it brings up an interesting point in that we tend to learn more from our failures than we do from our successes, obviously, right? Because we don't want to repeat the failures. So actually, there's a very good acronym for that I like to share with everybody. It's not mine. It actually came from a choreographer's sort of music school in the UK. and they said fail as an acronym, and it was, first attempt in learning. And I love that view, and I love that for you. And you're absolutely right. Not everybody's about perfectionism. The 5 archetypes that we talk about more, just for your information, and people on the show, I won't go too much into it. Again, it's just, we have the perfectionists that we mentioned. We have the warriors, which, that falls more into the, what if I fail sort of thing. Then we've got the crisis makers. Then we've got the dreamers, and then we've got the defiers. So depending on where you fall in that, but it definitely sounds like, um, at least in your case, you had that sort of that fear of failure, right? So I guess my question to you, and what our listeners would probably be interested in knowing is, I mean, obviously you've made a really good success now. So what would be your secret sauce to getting over that procrastination?
Yeah. So, and I guess that's why you're the procrastination coach. You already know the archetypes and you have them all laid out. And that's why I wanted to speak to you, the king of procrastination. But um, from my side of it, and maybe the listeners won't like this, is there's no silver bullet. It's a bunch of lead bullets. And I think it's just trying one time, learning from there and trying again. And in my certain situation, the biggest procrastination I've had in my personal career or my business career is I've been an employee or was an employee for over a decade. And I was sort of on that corporate ladder of work a little bit harder, get a promotion, work a little bit harder, get a promotion. And I was successful through that range, but I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to start my own business. And now I run my own business, my own successful business, and I'm very proud of what I do. But this is the 5th business I've tried to start. All the 4 other ones don't exist. And there's all these hurdles that you have to overcome, but I think understanding that it's going to take a couple swings at the plate, it's going to take a couple shots to be successful, really helped me understand that I don't need to be successful on my first go, and I can learn from something I've done and figure out what I like, what I don't like, and evolve from there. But if someone looked at me now, they'd say, oh, you were an employee for over a decade, now you're running your own business. That's amazing. I want to run my own business. I say, okay, how many businesses have you tried to start? What has that been like? How have you learned from that and going from there? Because that's what worked for me. This is my 5th business I've tried to start. 4 other ones, some of them made money, some of them didn't. Some of them I realized I really didn't like operating. So you have to try different things to be able to figure out what you like and what you don't like, but it'll also sort of break the floodgate in terms of understanding like how you can get past that procrastination and go and execute on your goals. So for me, it was really just like taking a swing at a plate and understanding that it's not going to be perfect from the first time. It's not going to be correct the first time. But if you keep on swinging, eventually you hit a home run.
No, and that's very interesting, and I love the fact that you mentioned that you tried to start 5 businesses, because I mean the truth is that many of us, when we start businesses, it's pretty much our 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, maybe even 10th. But one thing I want to dig into a little bit there too is because you mentioned something interesting, in that you found that you didn't like it. So my question to you, so we know that when we have something that we're aligned with, we know that we're passionate about it, we know that we can go and do it, we can make a success of it. But for yourself, when you started those businesses, was it from a place of passion, or was it just a place of, oh, it's might be cool, I might want.
Yeah, so definitely the latter. Like my passion is hockey. I know I'm not going to be a professional hockey player. If I tried to pursue that my entire life, I would probably be living on the streets. So I think you have to find passion in what you do. I don't think you have to do your passion. And I think that's a very different mindset that a lot of people have to approach. Like work is called work for a reason. It's not called fun. It's going to be frustrating. It's going to be a struggle. But if you can find joy and passion in what you do, then you can enjoy doing it every single day. If you just chase your straight passion, my passion's eating fast food, that's not going to be a good thing for you in the long term. So I think it's more important to find passion in what you do, which is something that served me really well in my career. But that's how I would sort of approach it, or at least change that mindset. But to your point before about trying the businesses and sort of that learning process is, I think when I was going out there, I was like, oh, this could be a business. I took that Bart Simpson approach and took action and figured it out. And sometimes it worked. And I realized very quickly, sometimes it wasn't a good idea and it actually doesn't provide any value. But also when I was running these businesses, which is something that's hugely valuable for me, is a lot of people have the mindset as an entrepreneur of like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is the direction I want to go. When I ran these 4 other businesses, I actually realized what I didn't want to do. And that has actually served me way more valuable. I don't know why there's fireworks going on, but that's a celebration. that has
Hmm.
been much more valuable to me to understand what I don't want out of a business and what I don't want to do compared to what I do want to do. Because business is extremely broad and you can do anything that you want. But if you go and try things and you realize what you don't want to do, you can now narrow that scope very, very narrow and then figure out what direction is actually going to serve you best. Do you want to be in hospitality? Do you want to work face to face? Do you want to be able to sell your product across the world? Do you want to carry inventory? Do you want to sell physical products? Do you want to sell services? Do you want to build a software company? And if you sort of go through iterations of that, you'll realize very quickly what your personality gravitates towards and what it repels. And then you can narrow your scope of what you're going to be most passionate in and feel best about what you do day in, day out.
No, and that's a very good way to look at it and a very good way to go about it. So my follow-up question to you would be, how do you personally find passion in say what you were doing before? Like let's say that you're working in a job that you don't necessarily, you're not 100% on board with it. You don't hate it, but how do you find the passion in those things that you're just not passionate about personally?
Yeah, for sure. So in mine, I can only speak from my personal experience. Like I started my career as an analyst in commercial real estate. Then I joined SaaS sales and was an entry-level salesperson, then a manager, then a director, then a VP, and now I'm a founder. And in each iteration of that in my career, I've been able to find passion in something different. In my first career and as an analyst in commercial real estate, I didn't find any passion. I hated it. I hated the industry. I hated the people I worked with. I hated the job. And I quit and I found something else. So you're not going to find passion at every place, but once I joined sales, I found a true passion for it. I loved the people I worked with. I loved communicating with other people and working with other people and speaking to other people. Like those are the passions that really drove me and why I wanted a career in sales. And then over time that iterates. When I was entry level sales, my passion was closing a deal and speaking to clients and stuff like that. As it became a VP of sales, my passion was training my team and helping them be successful and making sure they hit quota and helping them grow their careers. So your passions are going to change over time. They're not set in stone. And now my passion today is growing my business and providing value to my clients and providing value to the people that we're helping get jobs. So it's extremely rewarding for me. And at the end of the day, if you can find passion in what you do, you will be motivated to wake up every day, motivated to work hard. And if you do those two things, your likelihood of success is going to be a lot higher. So I think it has to iterate over time, your passions, and it will morph. Don't try to predict your passions. Just do what you want to do, and you'll find passions as you go.
No, I like that. Always pivoting and always finding the passion, or maybe even always learning something new. I have a question here. Maybe you can suggest if I'm wrong or not. But when you were looking for your passions, when you were pivoting between these passions, was it always sort of this? You mentioned that it was different things. So were you learning different things in all of those areas, or were you just applying what you knew differently?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both, right? It's an evolution. I wouldn't say it's a pivot, as you mentioned. It's really an evolution. Going back to your cartoon, maybe it's like more of a Pokemon as you evolve through your career, as like you evolve into the next iteration of yourself, which are hopefully bigger and stronger and better. But sometimes it may not be. But I think it's through exposure you can figure out passion, interests, and stuff like that. Where now I'm running my own business. My passion has always been in people and making connections and stuff like that. But now I also have to run the books and do financing and accounts receivable and invoicing and payroll, which I hate. I'm not passionate about it, but I have to do it. So you're going to have to do both sides of it, and you're going to have to expose yourself. Maybe now that I'm exposed to finance, I would have loved doing financial stuff, but I don't. So I think through exposure and trial and error, you're going to evolve your passions. You're going to find new passions, but you're also, again, going to find things that you may not like. Not everything has to be a passion. Some things just have to get done because it's a necessity.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up too, because there are things that need to be done that aren't necessarily fun to do, but we do them anyway. And I guess my question is, since you were able to pivot, well, not pivot, you were able to evolve your passion. I mean, is there a way to look at those things that you're doing, in a different lens with a purpose that would make them seem less like you hate?
Yes, potentially, but I also think it's better to be honest with yourself of what you gain energy from and what you lose energy from. And if you can be honest with yourself and figure out what those things are, you're going to be happy every single day. So for me, and for just, again, speaking from my personal experience, finance is something I don't like doing. I'm going to offload finance. I'm going to find someone who can do it for me, and I can free up my time to go focus on things that I am passionate about and I love doing, which is going to be better for me personally, and it's going to be better for my business. So you can do it in both situations, but I think in the root, you got to understand what brings you energy and makes you happier and wants you to wake up and work every day, and what don't. And if you can sort of create that divide and handle it appropriately, I think you will be better off. If you're an employee, your manager will be better off. If you're running a business, your business will be better off. And I don't think you have to be a jack of all trades, and you don't have to find passion in everything. You just have to figure out what motivates you and what doesn't motivate you, and try to shift in that direction.
No, absolutely. You don't have to be that as well. But just for our listeners as well, because we sort of teased around it a bit now. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about Talently and what it is you do?
Yeah, for sure. So Talently, long story short, is we are an offshore staffing and recruiting firm. So we help Canadian and American companies hire incredible talent that's not based in Canada and the US. And that is the high level overview of it. But the longer story behind it, which may be interesting to the listeners, if anyone does have that sort of background thought of starting a business or is either running their own businesses, is this concept of this business was actually exported and learned through my previous job. My most recent role, I was the VP of sales at a tech company here in Toronto. In that company, it was my first exposure to working with talent that was outside of North America. We had people working for the company in Brazil and Romania, Pakistan, and Spain, and all across the world. And this is my first time ever doing that or being exposed to that. And saw the value firsthand of using and working with people outside of North America, covering different time zones, providing different cultural perspective, but also the financial benefits associated with it. North America is a very expensive continent to live in. Toronto, New York, Chicago, wherever it may be. But you can find people that are just as talented or even more talented in other markets that cost 50, 60, 80% less from a salary perspective. So operationally, it's a huge benefit. When I was running this or exposed to this in my old company, it was not a very good process. It wasn't very organized. The talent wasn't very consistent. So I went out and saw the value of this, but I also saw the inconsistency of it. So I went out and started Talently to go solve this problem. And to our point about evolving, is my initial business iteration or ideation was, I'm going to help North American companies hire the best talent anywhere in the world. And I set up when I started the business, I set up 10 recruiting teams in 10 different countries. And my concept was, I'll find you talent anywhere in the world. Horrible business idea. Operationally, it was a nightmare. Time zones were crazy. Language barriers were a mess. But what I realized was probably through my first 5 or 6 clients, they only wanted to speak to and hire talent from one of my recruiting teams. So I said, screw it. I'm going to get rid of all 9 recruiting teams. I'm going to go all in on this one country and this one team. And that winning team and our evolution was to focus on South Africa. So we are the largest specific to South African talent recruited for North American companies. So we help North American companies hire top talent from South Africa. And in hindsight, South Africa makes a ton of sense for North American companies and checks a ton of boxes. One, they're all native English speakers. English is the first language in South Africa. 2, they're highly educated. 7 of the top 10 universities in the entire continent of Africa are in South Africa, so super well educated. And 3, South Africa is a business hub of Africa. So everyone's wired for business. Everyone wants to hustle. Everyone wants to make money. So it really culturally has a lot of similarities to North America. Unfortunately, though, for South Africans, their economy is very poor. Their currency is extremely volatile. Their politics are a mess. So the job market in South Africa is very limited. And even if you do work for a South African company, you don't have the best job security. You don't have very good pay. So it's actually significantly beneficial for South Africans to work for North American companies and earn US dollars or whatever it may be from a stability perspective, but also from an earning perspective. And the North American companies get access to incredible talent for 50, 60, 70% cheaper than North American talent. So our clients in North America save money. Our candidates in South Africa get access to new jobs and get higher paying, better jobs. And we have a business model built into it. So it's truly a win-win-win. North American companies get great talent. South African employees get great jobs. and we have a revenue model. So it really is a fulfilling and valuable connection across the board.
No, for sure it is. And especially since COVID, everyone's now, getting used to the idea that we can, work anywhere really. And there are some that are kind of bucking the trend and they want to go back to offices. Where do you fall on that? Do you think that remote teams can be just as productive? I'm biased, so I'm not going to answer this because I'm totally
Yeah.
biased. But do you think that remote teams are as effective or can be more effective than on-site teams?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm biased as well. I'm in the business of remote teams. So I believe that the idea of remote work and offshore work is never going to leave the business world now. This is part of our world. It's part of operations. Do I think it is more effective than in office? If everybody is in office and that is the culture, then it is more effective for everyone to meet face to face and work together every single day, hands down. But that is not the world that we operate in, and things need to evolve. People want to work from home. I have little kids at home. I want to be at home. I don't want to commute. I want to see my kids and be around here, and I'm going to be more effective. Is that right for everybody? Probably not. But if you were going to do that as a business, you're going to sacrifice on potentially recruiting and bringing in talent that wants that flexibility and wants that ability to work remote. So if everyone is in office and that's the culture, that is the most effective working environment. Unfortunately, that is not the world that we operate in now, and everyone wants a hybrid environment or fully remote environment or something like that. So things have to evolve and business has to evolve to support that. So that's sort of an answer to sort of ride both sides of the fences, but it's the truth.
No, and that's it's a very diplomatic way to put it as well. Just to give some back, I'm biased because I've been working, I guess I'd be like a Cheech and Chong of working online. I was working online way before it was, cool. Because I've been pretty much remote since about 2011. So
Yeah.
I always like to hear other people's sort of perspective on that. Now, just going back into building this successful business, what do you think was your biggest challenge besides when you first had that logistical nightmare in the beginning?
Yeah. So the biggest challenge is demand in any business. You have to get people in the door. People are interested. People give you time of day to be able to make a sale. Doesn't matter if you're selling physical product or a service like I am. The biggest challenge in every business is demand. You need to get clients that are going to be willing to give you the time of day, willing to trust you, and willing to pay you. And trying to figure out the consistent motion of demand is the struggle of every business. Do you run it through ads? Do you do cold calling? Do you do referral network? Whatever it may be. Luckily for me, I've had 10 years of practice in my sales career. So I know how to start a demand motion with my eyes closed. Is it going to be perfect from day one? No, it's not, but it's going to evolve over time. And I'm very confident in my skill set and my experience to be able to go and generate that demand. So that is 100% the biggest problem, issue, and worry for my business. And it should be for every business, because if demand in any industry dries up, your business is dead. So especially early days, which is something to consider, is like you have no brand awareness, you have no team, you have no budget, you have no representation, you have no referrals. So getting that first demand and sort of cracking that seal to be able to get people in the door and then deliver your service effectively, so they're going to come back to you or they're going to tell their friends about you. That is the struggle for me out of the gate, and something that I work very, very hard on to get that motion starting to turn.
No, that's excellent. That's a very good insight. And actually, it sort of segues into my next question, since we have, sales guru on the show with us today. I myself have, I've seen various programs, various, educational type things on sales. And when you're talking about creating the demand, they always have that emotion, underlying emotion involved there. And I'm curious as to what your take is on this. So we obviously have a lot of fear-based because it sells. We have a lot of fear-based. We have a lot of validate. I'm going to call it validation based because see a mixed podcast. I don't want to say the other one. Validation based, and then we've got like passion based. Now, in your experience, what has been sort of the major emotional force behind creating demand successfully?
Yeah, so it varies over time. I think the most important part of sales is getting people to like you. And it's that simple. You will never make a sale and you will never buy something from someone you don't like. That simple. If you can make someone like you, trust you, believe you, then people are going to be more likely to buy from you. If you walk into a restaurant and the service is shit, you're going to walk out. If you go to a car dealership and the guy's being an asshole for you, you're not going to buy a car from him. If you get on a sales pitch for software and the person's being rude to you and shows up late, you're obviously going to you're automatically going to have a negative association with that, even if you need or want that thing. If you walk in, someone remembers your name, someone says something personal about you, someone asks you about your day and actually cares and wants to help you out, you're going to start liking that person more. Doesn't mean you're going to get the sale, but the odds of you, and this is the thing about sales, is sales is not a game of push. Okay, more fireworks. I guess what I'm saying is electric. Sales is not a game of pushing. That's what a lot of people think it is. You push the features of this thing, you push what I provide, you push our pricing, you push this. Sales is a game of pulling. Pull someone in, make them trust you, learn about them, understand their background, what are their kids' names, what schools do they go to, how old are they, what do they care about, what do they do in their free time. If you can pull people in and let them open up to you and ask them the right questions, you're going to be able to build a strong relationship. That person's going to like you more. And then who gives a shit what you're going to sell? If they like you more, then the likelihood of them buying is going to go up. And that is the game of sales. Do not push, pull, and just try to increase the odds of that person buying from you. It's an odds game. It's not binary. It's not 1 or 0. It's this person is sitting in the middle right now. Are you going to move them closer to the 0 of not buying, or you're going to move them to higher to the 100 of buying? And that's the way that people should think about sales, is like, how do you get someone to like you and try to pull them in to you, and don't try to push what you're selling on.
No, that's very good, and you know, it's pretty accurate. I remember just going back in my own experience as a cell phone store manager in a very small town. I missed my sales quota, I think, probably 3 or 4 months in a row. But then the 5th month, the guy that I went out to beer with, that the boss was mad at me because I went out with a beer for him. He was at this company, and he wound up getting like 3,500 phone contracts in a month, and then I made up my quota like for the entire year.
And do you think he bought those phones because he was so impressed with the features of the phones, or he bought those phones because he had an emotional connection to you because he went out for beers?
Well, you know, my ego would say I'd hope it's for me, but I mean the phone features were pretty good too. But
There you go. Well, that's the thing. It's a team effort, right? You can't just do it with one without the other.
You're certainly right about that. And so you've got this vision for Talently moving forward. Where would you expect to see yourself in the next year?
Yeah, the next year is simple. Grow. All I want to do is evolve the business and improve our bottom line. I don't care about top line. I wanted to create as much profit as possible within this business. I'm not looking to raise money. I'm not looking to sell the business. I'm working for a lifestyle business. I have a family, and I really respect and want to focus on my free time and what I want to do. That is something that I'm very passionate about, and something I think I have a very clear perspective on. Is like, my goal in running a business or starting a business is to create enough consistency, free time, and structure that I can run a successful business, not have to report to a boss, and then still have enough free time to go do what I want to do. Whether it's taking my kids to school in the morning, I'm going golfing with my dad on Friday. You just got to be able to free up time, and life is very short. You can work 20 hours a day if that's what you want to do, and that's going to make you happy. But I'm trying to optimize my life and my business to my free time and my lifestyle. And the closer I can get to that by creating systems and creating client databases and providing a true value of service, the easier those things are going to come. So I don't have a number in mind. I don't have a head count in mind. I don't have a growth trajectory in mind. I don't care about that. I want to grow the business effectively so I can buy back my time and my lifestyle to focus on things I really care about and want to spend my time.
You know, well said. I don't think I could have said it better, and I don't think many people could have said it better than that. That actually segues into sort of my last topic here that we had today, which was you want to get back your time as much as possible, and this is particularly going to have an effect on your business model as well. And I want to get your thoughts on it. We're talking about AI, right? Artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, on the one hand, it's going to be great for automating your business. So I guess, do you use any AI currently in your business?
Yeah, all the time, daily.
What do you use it for?
So a couple things is I think a lot of people don't understand that we're all using AI every single day without knowing. It's part of our day to day. When you type a message and it does autocomplete, that is artificial intelligence. Like that is something is understanding your speech, you're writing, and trying to finish the sentence for you. So first things first is like a lot of people have exposure to AI and the benefits of AI without even knowing it. A lot of people think AI is just chat GPT. That's not true. There's a lot of things that are going on that AI is helping the background and supporting us in our day-to-day lives. Specifically for me, take a huge benefit and use of using AI to speed up tasks and support me as an assistant. A perfect example for that is when we get new clients, we run a 2-week custom search process to go and find the right talent for that role. If you're looking for a podcast editor, your podcast is going to have a different cadence. Your podcast is going to have a different brand. Your podcast is going to have a different release schedule. You're going to need a different podcast editor than another client would need. So we run a custom search. During that search process, we have a lot of automation and AI built through that, whether it's creating the job description, whether it's posting the jobs onto job boards, whether it's filtering resumes and matching them appropriate to your job. A lot of these things are done leveraging AI as an assistant to speed up the task, but we still have humans and people supporting it throughout the process. So my big take and focus on AI is not to be scared of it, not to shy away from it, not to use it heavily. It's how can you use AI to automate or augment your day to day to make you more effective as a person, as an individual. And that's a really important thing for me. I post a ton of content on LinkedIn. I put a lot of that LinkedIn through ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT to be my professional LinkedIn copywriter. I literally write in and say, hey, I need you to be my professional LinkedIn copywriter and make sure that my posts are engaging, well thought out, and perfectly edited. Boom. They spit it back out. I copy and paste what I wrote in there. They change a couple grammatical errors, spacing consistencies, or whatever it may be. And my post has now been professionally edited in 2 seconds. So there's tons of value in AI. If you embrace it, you will figure out how it could benefit your life. If you shy away from it, or you're just scared it's going to take your job, it's probably going to take your job. But the people who are open to considering it and using it will benefit from it massively.
No, for sure. And you mentioned something interesting there too. I mean, in the future, and I can see it sort of going this way already. Do you foresee it? Not now, but potentially, could you see Talently becoming sort of a hybrid marketplace for like AI bots or prompts that do certain things like article rewriting or generation, and then the other things that might include a human as well? Or have you thought that?
I've not thought that far ahead, but I'll think about it right now and say no. We are in the business of people connection. People will always be at the helm of business and growth. Are those people going to leverage AI and maybe you'll need less people over time for a specific task? Possibly. But to my point before about AI is like, I'm big in embracing AI. If it's going to make my business more effective and provide better service to my clients, then I will embrace AI and I'll implement it. If there's going to be augmented AI copywriters that we can place within businesses, great. I'll figure it out when it happens. I'm not worried about the future. I'm not planning for the future, but as it comes, I'll open up that door. I'll flip that rock over and see how it works and play around with it, which I do weekly. I play with new platforms and see how it works because things are evolving very quickly. But I don't live in fear of like it wiping out a business or wiping out a person because this happens. This is cyclical, right? Like the same idea in the automotive industry, or you're seeing it now in warehousing. Like all these warehouses are getting automated. Warehouse workers are out of business. Okay, but now there's someone who has to implement those systems and someone who has to maintenance them. Like there's other jobs and evolutions that are always going to happen. It's the same thing in the industrial revolution. Sure, this may be the AI revolution, but we also went through the internet revolution. There's always going to be something else, and humanity and people will always be there. So what iteration that's going to be, I'm not sure. No one can predict it. But if I think about it the right way and I'm willing to evolve, I'll be able to fit into it no matter what.
That's very well said. Some very great insight there. I tend to share a lot of those views. We shouldn't be, I don't think we should be scared of it. It's kind of like fire. we're not really afraid of fire. I mean, it has the potential to both create and destroy, cook food and destroy things. But, end of the day, it's all about how we're going to use it, right? Because it is just a tool as well. So we are getting pretty close up here to the time, Dan. Is there anything that maybe you felt I should have asked but didn't ask, or anything we should have covered but we didn't cover today?
No, the only thing that I would ask or be interested in is, as a procrastination coach, I would love to know from your perspective, like what is the number one issue or concern that you find when it comes to procrastination in business specifically? Like what is it circled around? Why is it holding people back? And what do you recommend to move through that?
Right. So with entrepreneurs specifically, like people who are looking to build businesses, most of the time they fall into one of two camps. That's either, the perfectionist or kind of the worrier. So that it ties into like the fear of failure, the fear of being rejected, the fear of being laughed at, uh, the fear of not, or maybe even just not knowing how to do it, right? So essentially, right, is to just talk to somebody about it. Talk through it with somebody. It can be a friend, a mentor, coach. You can even talk to yourself through it, but it's a little bit of a one-sided conversation. It doesn't really do much. But it just by bouncing the idea off of somebody else, it gives you that hook. So if you're looking for some sort of validation, by betting it with close friends and family first, you can have a little bit more safety in that before you go out in the real world. If you don't know how to do something, again, network. Ask somebody else. Hey, have you ever seen anybody do this? Do you know somebody who can do this? Who can I talk to? How can I, like you? How can I figure this out? Right. But those of us who don't, throw cherry bombs at things, we tend to, and I fall into this camp too. We tend to get lost in the details either because it's way more exciting to plan how to do it than it is to actually do it, or we get sidelined by, oh, how do I do this? And it just gets overwhelming because we don't know how to do it. So again, just talk to somebody. Again, it doesn't really even matter who. As long as you're talking to somebody, you'll be able to access that part of your brain at the back, sort of subconscious, to push things forward and see what it is exactly that's really holding you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And are there specific areas of business do you find people procrastinate more about, or like where do you find is the most common area? Is it, I don't know, hiring people, firing people, like making financial decisions? Like, is it just starting? Like, where do you find people are struggling the most, or at least hitting that barrier?
Struggling the most is it's actually interesting. There's two. You have the first starting. So getting started is actually the hardest part. And then you hit that ceiling at some point. That ceiling is normally between $10,000 and $50,000, at which point they need to start making decisions on how they can, scale, how they can make things better. And this is where they tend to hesitate a little because they've had some of that success. And sometimes they're worried about adding new things or complicating it, or they're worried about, if I suddenly do this, am I going to lose my business? So definitely expansion after actually starting the business, definitely anything to do with expansion or to scale your business. A lot of people have a lot of hesitation in, again, because either they don't know the direction or like you said, they don't necessarily want to hire anybody, but maybe they need to fire somebody because this person they need to fire and hire somebody else. Maybe they don't like confrontation. So definitely those are the two biggest groups. Just getting started, again, it's that fear of rejection, fear of failure, or they think they're not good enough, or they just don't know how to do it. And then when it's expanding, it's a mixture of that, oh, don't know how to do it, and well, they've had success, so they kind of don't want to lose that.
Yeah,
So those are the main ones that at least I've found.
yeah, makes
Recently.
sense. So it's something, I think that's something everyone has to realize. It's like, you're not unique to this. Everyone deals with procrastination. Everyone deals with fear. Like, that's a normal human reaction. And I think something that works really well for me is like just weighing your options. Is like, hey, this is the fork in the road. If I go this direction, I'm gonna stay status quo. If I go this direction, people might laugh at me. Or if I go this direction, I might spend $1,000 and not get it back. Or I may make $5,000 at that $1,000 investment. Like, you have to understand the risk aversion of yourself, but also the like net positive to net negative outcome of that decision. And I think if you think about it very analytical, it paints it very black and white. And every situation isn't black and white, but if you put numbers associated with it or some sort of analysis behind it, I think that, at least for me, can definitely reinforce a decision, or at least like push me over the edge to get it done. So everyone has to find what works for them, but that's something that definitely rings true for me.
No, for sure. And that's a very good way to do it as well. Just to be careful not to get into analysis paralysis, where you spend all your time analyzing and then you don't actually do anything. Again, I'm guilty. I've done that.
Yeah.
So what happens in those cases is I normally assign a priority to it. So, I use 1 to 5. And if it's a 5, whereas, 1 is the most important, 5 is kind of the least important, I tend to say, okay, so my number 5s, I'm only going to use X amount of time and that's it.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, and over time, what that does is it helps you make a decision faster, because you make these decisions and, wrong or right, you actually learn what the worst case scenario is. You've learned like, you've seen what the worst case scenario could possibly be, or the best case, right? And
Yeah.
then the best case wasn't that good, or the worst case wasn't that bad. So, assign it a value 1 to 5, and then say, number 5, I'm not going to take any more 5 minutes thinking. Number
Yeah.
1, I might spend a day. But
Yeah,
just
that's
getting
what I
the
was gonna say on that as well, which sounds like you do as well. Is like, I think priorities are great. I actually think timelines are the most powerful. And I think back to university is like, hey, you have a project due. Everyone procrastinates to the last minute, but everyone tries to get it done because you have that due date. And I think in business, like a lot of things that we operate in don't have exact due dates. And I think if you do give it a firm due date and a deadline, that will cause you to act and make a decision and hold you accountable. And I think as you start to iterate and add timelines to everything, that'll just become human nature to you, because timelines in business don't really exist for the most part. But if you do implement those and realize that they are firm, that could help a ton of people just like get shit done.
That is very true. Very, very, very true. Well, we are coming up here in the time. Just before we go though, Dan, how can people reach out to you on LinkedIn, or how can they reach out to you at Talently if they have questions or they want to touch base?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm huge on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, Daniel Seligman, I'm in Toronto, founder of Talently. So feel free to reach out via LinkedIn if you just want to talk about business, or you're procrastinating on something, or really just like want to chat. I'm happy to connect there. If you're interested in the services and want to work with us, our website is hirewithtalently.com. Again, you can reach out through LinkedIn, but our website is hirewithtalently.com. So you can reach out to us directly. And we'll make sure that you're taken care of and you get top talent out of South Africa, and hopefully save you tens of thousands of dollars on payroll and salary costs.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Dan. And to our listeners, again, don't worry about having to write that down. We'll have that in the show description for you. That's not a problem. And just once again, Dan, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a very good conversation. I genuinely enjoyed it. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and be that inspiration or motivation for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.